Hello friends, this is Varsa Patro and welcome to another tutorial, and this time I'm going to explain about web page lifecycle. So in this tutorial, what we have to learn that whenever a browser requests something, it directly goes to server, and what actually happens at server side. So when we request or when browser requests a .html page, it is simply copied to browser because HTML is interpreted by browser, so output will be rendered. But if you will request a .asp or .aspx page, a lot of work is done at the server side because classic ASP and ASP.NET is actually executed at server side. Lots of processing goes on, then a HTML file is rendered to browser or output is given to the browser, and there it is interpreted and the output will be displayed on our screen. So when browser requests a .asp and ASPX page, there are lots of events or processing goes on at server side, and what kind of processing occur at server side consists of web page lifecycle. So let's begin. So when we request a .aspx or .asp page, the page must complete a full page lifecycle and various kind of events are raised at server side. The events are generally pre-init, init complete, preload, load, load complete, pre-render, pre-render complete, save state complete, render, and unload. We can actually see the page lifecycle by the attribute that is present in page directive of ASP.NET page. There's an attribute trace attribute. If we will make the trace attribute value to true, then at the time of execution we can see the page output as well as all the events those are raised at server side. So let's see how the events are raised. For this, just open your Visual Studio and the ASP.NET page. So go to File, then New Project. Here Web, ASP.NET Web Application. Okay. So it's simply my page directive which having a form, simple form, and so in this page directive there are attributes like language, auto event wire up, code behind, inherits, etc. And now here I will put the trace attribute. So tracing is a process by which we can see the execution when the page output will be rendered. Means whatever the internal execution of a page we can see it. So make a trace attribute is equal to true. So by default trace attributes value is false, so we can't see the execution process when the output will be rendered, because it is safe to put it false because no one can see the execution process. So now run it. So the output will be given. This is the browser page, and see, so these are the events like over here pre-init. Here pre-init is begin and pre-init is ended, init complete, preload complete, load complete, pre-render, and many more, all the events present over here. Okay, but if I will make this trace attribute to false, then it is not possible to see it, or by default it is false. See, there's nothing. Okay, so whenever the user requests for a web page, the request goes to IIS IIS then checks the ISAPI extension of the request to check how to process the request. Means at IIS or at server side there are various kind of engine present. So when IIS get a request, it first look that which engine can serve the request, and which request to map is decided by the file extension of the page that is requested. Means if it is a .aspx page, this is for ASP.NET web page. If it is .asmx, then that is for web service. If it is .config, then it is a configuration file, like this. So when we request a .aspx page, then first IIS give this particular page to ASP.NET Engine. When the ASP.NET Engine receives the request, it check whether an application domain exists for this or not. Here the page have to goes through two sections. First one is HTTP module and second one is HTTP and handler section. HTTP module actually inspect the incoming request, and HTTP handler compile it or compile the page, then generate the output. So now what is the application domain? Application domain provides the actual isolation level so that various websites hosted in the same IIS servers will not interface with each other. Once the application domain has been created, the object required to serve the incoming request and generate the proper response are created. So let's learn some terminology in order to learn a web page lifecycle. First one is stateful protocol and stateless protocol. Generally there are two types of protocols exist, that may be stateful or that may be stateless. So what is the meaning of stateless protocols? Those protocols are stateless. They treat each request independently, or whatever information regarding it, regarding the processing or transaction will not be stored in case of a stateless protocols. As HTTP is a stateless protocols, so whenever a HTTP request comes, the request will be processed and the output will be rendered, but whatever the processing information will be deleted when the output is given to client. But in case of a stateful protocols, all the transaction information will be stored at the server side. That will be helpful for same kind of request whenever same kind of request comes next time. For this reason, there's a concept ViewState present in ASP.NET. ViewState is a feature used by ASP.NET web page to store the value of a page and its control just before posting the page. Once the page is posted, the first task by the page processing is to restore the ViewState to get the values of the control. And ViewState information is stored in the HTML hidden fields. Now what is postbake? Postbake is the name given to the process of submitting an ASP.NET page to the server for processing. Postbake is done if certain credentials of the page are to be checked against some sources. This is something that a client machine is not able to accomplish, and so these details have to be posted back to the server. Now what is round trip? Whenever a user interaction requires processing on the server, the web page is posted back to server. It is processed there and is returned back to browser. This sequence is called as round trip. Now all our web pages are actually derived from page class. This page class is present under system.web.ui namespace, and page class having a data member that is known as isPostbake. It is a read-only data member which is Boolean type. So as it is Boolean type, it is having two values, true and false. So if a page property that is isPostbake is false, then the page is requested for the first time, and if isPostbake is true, then the page is already requested. Now every control that is present on a web page, control means all the visible elements like checkbox, text box, radio button, buttons, etc. Every controls having a data member that is auto postbake. If you want a control to postbake automatically when an event is raised, we need to set the auto postbake property of the control to true. Then it will be automatically posted back. So now let's see what's the stage present in web page lifecycle. The first stage is initialize stage. In this stage, This is the first phase in the life cycle for any page or control. It is here that any settings needed for the duration of the incoming request are initialized. The next stage is load view state. In this phase, the view state property of the control is populated. The view state information comes from the hidden variable on the control used to persist the state across round trips to the server. The input string from this hidden variable is parsed by the page framework and the view state property is set. This can be modified via the load view state method. This allows ASP.NET to manage the state of your control across page loads so that each control is not reset to its default state each time the page is posted. Next stage is process post-back data. During this phase, the data sent to the server in the posting is processed. If any of this data results in a requirement to update the view state, the update is performed via the load post data method. Next phase is load stage. Create child control method is called if necessary to create and initialize server controls in the control tree. The state is restored and the form controls show client-side data. We can modify the load phase by handling the load event with the onload method. Next stage is send post-back change modifications. If there are any state changes between the current state and the previous state, change events are raised via the raise post data change event method. Next phase is handle post-back events. Here the client-side event that caused the post-back is handled. Next is pre-render. In this stage, this is a phase just before the output is rendered to the browser. It is essentially your last chance to modify the output prior to rendering using the onPreRender method. Next is save state. Near the beginning of the life cycle, the persisted view state was loaded from the hidden variable. Now it is saved back to the hidden variable, persisting as a string object that will complete the round trip to client. Now we can override this using the save view state method. Next is render. This is the phase where the output is sent to the client browser that is generated. We can override it using the render method, and create child control method is called if necessary to create and initialize server controls in the control tree. Last stage is dispose. This is the last phase of life cycle. It gives you an opportunity to do any final cleanup and release reference to any expensive resources such as database connection. We can modify it using the dispose method. So this is the web page life cycle. Hope you people enjoy this tutorial, and thanks for watching. Bye.